All right. Welcome to React. Um, I think I'm going to jump into it and just kind of talk a little bit about React in general. Y'all have been working on labs and stuff today, so you have a taste of it already. And then we'll just kind of walk through some of the basic stuff you've been working on and kind of see what it looks like and answer questions along the way. And again, as always, feel free to just put a hand up or stop me, and we'll take care of whatever you need. React. Um, React is cool. We've been spending a lot of time in the last 3 weeks getting JavaScript to do what we want, getting data from places, putting that data into data structures and JavaScript, putting it on the page, handling events, changing the page depending on what happens. And we can do that fine now. It's great. React and other frameworks like it are basically a way to React is a library, not a framework. There are frameworks and libraries. The distinction is tenuous, but basically, when you're a web developer, you do these tasks all the time. And as we saw, like with even just writing a little function that's like EL instead of get element by ID, we're going to be writing code because that's the tool set we use, writing code to help us write code better. So React is a library of things that help us write this specific kind of code better to create web pages that look a certain way, that handle events a certain way and help us provide interactivity, that let us do live updates of data on the page and put data on the page and change that and handle all the things that we've been doing. React has this reactive philosophy that we kind of talked about a bit in phase one, where you have some data in state, and that data is rendered out in a certain way in your view. And when that data changes, the view changes. One of the main differences with React is that that happens automatically. So when you change your data, your page updates, which is super nice. You don't have to do all that stuff yourself. Um, there are other libraries like this. There are also ones that people will call frameworks instead of libraries. The main difference being libraries are like, here's a bunch of tools, do what you like. Frameworks are more like, if you put your files in these particular places and name them this specific thing and name your functions these things, they'll automatically work a certain way. React doesn't do that. It gives you a bunch of things to do and says, here, make these work however you like. So the more flexible, less standardization. There's pluses and minus. I think React is pretty cool. I had a really hard time getting into it when I first started learning. It took me a long time to just accept it as a thing, but it's I love it. It's great. So yeah, and that's pretty much why you would use it to uh, create the things that you've been doing more easily in a more maintainable way. And a lot of people use it out in the world. So it's good to know for jobs. Um, and yeah, that's so it does follow this MVC, this model view controller philosophy, where the core part is your data, and we're going to be keeping it in state. I have things to say about that, but you have your state. Your state is rendered out to a view. Your view usually provides UI elements that you can change the model or the data with, and that reactive cycle continues. And so there's not a lot of going back and forth and spaghetti code and fiddling around with stuff. You got a nice cycle of things, which makes it easier to put together and also easier to debug once you get used to that cycle. Um, yeah. I think that's the basic. Any kind of overall questions about general React philosophy? More moving parts. I don't know. I think it has. So that's an interesting comment. As I said, with more moving parts, it does have more moving parts for sure, but most of those moving parts are hidden from you. Um, like all the rendering to the page stuff, updating the page when you change your data, all that kind of stuff. Like that is definitely more complicated in React, but you don't have to see any of it. There's just different moving parts than we're used to. So there's a learning curve, of course. But if you think about the code that you wrote for like, your project, probably
Right.
there's
It's
a lot
also
of functions to make things happen and change the page, and react to your data and all that. So hopefully this should be simpler on our side of things. But yeah, there are way more moving parts overall for sure. Other questions, comments? Awesome, awesome. Let me go ahead and share screen, and we'll code a little bit while we're talking through stuff. Great. So I'm just going to go ahead and I'm just going to make a new React project, and we'll kind of just like talk through stuff from there. Azani, yeah.
Hey, one comment that I did have, I I think one of the things that kind of helped me because I've been kind of getting into it over the weekend, and I don't think this is per se a very sustainable strategy. But I kind of found myself trying to say to myself, like, what is the vanilla JavaScript
Mhm.
like equivalent of what we're talking about right now?
Yeah,
Like
sure.
props versus like arguments or components now being like functions and things like that. So I was just I don't know how helpful, how long that type of thinking might be helpful, but I feel like that was the core thing I feel like I found myself trying to do because I'm like, all right, I already understood this like one time over.
Yeah,
So how can I just understand what this version of it is like trying to do?
yeah, for sure. And I think that's totally helpful. And I think that's more helpful than you'll see in a lot of places. Um, I think our curriculum does an okay job of it, but I think most React tutorials and everything you find is just like do these things and it magically works. But React is not magic. React is literally just JavaScript under the hood. This is all written in JavaScript, and with enough time and effort, you could write it as well. And so, thinking about what things are happening and how that would be written in vanilla JavaScript, if that helps you conceptualize what's going on, yeah, 100%. That's a super good way to do it. I love it. Cool. I'm gonna start a little project that we'll work on here. I like tarot cards. I'm gonna do a tarot card project. Um, so I have the create React app thing installed. I think we need to do npx create React app. I'm gonna give it a name, tarot demo, and that should go ahead and there we go. Create the directory for me, do all the stuff, grab all the npms modules, make the structure and everything, and get the basic stuff set up for us. There's a lot. If you take a look through your node modules in any React project, there's 1 billion things in there. And it's all JavaScript, but it's all stuff that React relies on to go. So yeah, what I'd like to do is kind of pop this open in code, talk through kind of how to bootstrap itself, kind of how the project hooks into your HTML, and how that works, and then start just throwing some React stuff up there, and we'll talk about it as we go along. Um, yeah, yeah. Specifically now or no? If you want to, yeah, sure. This is just kind of like sketching, kind of. So if you want to, yeah, feel free. I'm not going by any specific project or example or anything. We're just gonna kind of talk through stuff as we go through it. Great. Let's see. Here's my demo, and there's some stuff. So I'm gonna pop this open in code so we can see everything in a nice way here. Cool. So here is our React project. I think does it if I do ls-la, yeah, it automatically makes a little Git repository for you. So if you create a React project and you aren't expecting that, that can be a little bit weird sometimes, but you can tell it not to do that if you want. But for our purposes, that's fine. So this is our React project that we get by default every time we do a create React app. Um, the important part here, well, let's talk about the two parts here. There's a source folder and a public folder. When you start up your project, so you can see it in a browser, you're starting up a little development web server, kind of like we were doing with Light Server or Live Server or JSON server even. And so the two things that it does is it goes through your source code, starting with the index, which I think it says to do in the manifest, maybe, or maybe the package. Basically starts at your index.js and goes through and compiles everything. One of the things that we kind of forget most of the time when we're doing React is React looks an awful lot like JavaScript. Most of it behaves exactly like JavaScript. React is not 100% JavaScript. React gets turned into JavaScript by this transpiler, meaning that when we do an npm start, it takes all the React code we have in source and it turns it into actual JavaScript. So all of these get turned into JavaScript. And for the most part, it's one for one, but occasionally there are things, especially in the JSX, that will be a little bit different that we have to be aware of. But so what it does is it goes through and at JS and just sort of shakes it out and gets everything that's connected and turns it into a big thing that it can run, a big chunk of JavaScript that it can serve. The other thing it serves up is anything in public. It just serves as a regular web server would. So you can go and look at your HTML. You can look at your, if you put CSS files in here, or images or whatever. So the first thing you're going to see, and let's just go ahead and start this up. npm start. Hopefully that'll start up in the right browser. If not, let's drag it over. Browser over here somewhere. Go away. What? Yeah. What did that do? Oh, let's do the terminal. There we go. Great. Where did it start that up for me? In Chrome? No. In a different Chrome window? I don't know. There we go. Look close to the awesome. Oh, it did the right one. So this takes a second to start up because it's doing the transpiling the first time. Yep, yeah, it was created by Facebook. I think most stuff in Facebook is written in React. They probably used other things now, but yeah, where we go, bud? 3,000. Takes a minute to get going. I typed, let me type it again. npm start. And so if we look at our package JSON here, it gives us some scripts to start off with. So it's going to do npm start, and that should kick off everything and open that up in the browser. So it started. Oh, wait, did it give me some error there that I didn't see? Hang on. There might be one. What did you give me? I think there might be one thing I need to fix here. Am I thinking about the right thing? Is it the React stuff or is the other one? I think that's the other one. Let me see if I can catch that error message one more time. Nope, that should work. Huh. Is there something else running on Port 3000?
Check the chat, Mark. I got the same error. It said edit source app.js and reload.
Edit it and reload. Aha. One of my dependencies is importing something without declaring dependencies. Cool. Is that doing anything? Maybe React is broken now. I don't know. Hmm. Interesting. Uh, I don't think this is gonna change anything, but let me do it. Yeah. I don't think that's gonna change anything, but it should make that warning go away. Oh, hey, vulnerability is not a problem. Let's do our npm start. Hmm. Well, maybe React is just broken now. It doesn't anymore. It used to. It used to matter. Hmm. Interesting. It's not throwing any errors here. I'm wondering if I have anything else I shouldn't have. Was it on this kind of machine? Uh,
Is it supposed to be the React symbol with that message on there?
yeah, with the spinny.
Yeah, I got that.
Yeah.
So it's working.
Huh. Well, I wonder what I broke. No, that's fine. Wow. Yeah, maybe I broke React somehow. I don't know. Great. Cool, cool, cool. I wonder, I'm gonna grab a
It'd be the Babel package that you deleted, and now it's breaking it again. Or
I just installed it, so I just added it. Let me see.
oh, I thought I saw the like dash D somewhere.
Oh, that was install it as a dev dependency, so it'll save it there.
Oh, got it.
Let me see what happens when I pull something down. Let me grab, I don't know, a simple one here. React app example. Yeah, let's do that. Cool. I'm gonna go ahead and clone down something simple from Canvas. Let's do this back up here. Cool. And so this is fantastic. Let me do an npm install. That should grab all the stuff we need. I hope React isn't broken. That would be really sad. Okay, let me try an npm start. See if it does the same thing. Yeah, let's run another port just to see what happens. I have. This is where it's trying to start. Did I just completely break React on my machine somehow? That's going to be a bad time. No errors in the console over here. Cool, 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 cool. Fascinating. Let's see. What's the error message? Site can't be reached. Classic troubleshooting. Site can't be reached. Yep, that's what I want. Yeah, same thing. Okay, so it's not just me, and I assume y'all have been able to run stuff from Canvas, or else I probably would have heard about it. That works there. Oh, I bet I know what it is. I bet I know what it is. I don't know why this happens. Let me see. Let me try. So I do. Oh, yeah, that's it. For some reason, sometimes it doesn't like localhost. I have to put in the actual IP address there for some reason. I don't know why. But there it is. There's our React app. Hooray. Cool. Whew. Lesson saved. Cool. So that is working. So this is the basic React app that you're getting when you do an npm install there. Let me make sure that just close down that other one. Great. Close that up. Cool. So let's take a look at what is actually happening here. So the very first thing it's going to do actually is look at our index HTML. And the important part is right here. This div with the ID of root. That is where the entire React application is going to hang off of. Let's look at our index.js here. So index.js is where React is going to start. The build process is going to start. And the first thing we're doing here is something that we know about here. So we are just grabbing that element with the ID of root. And then this is something that we're grabbing from React. So React actually has two parts that we're going to be using. There's the React part that is the sort of state management and event handling and rendering and everything. And then there's React DOM, and that's the part that hooks React itself into the document object model in our browser. Why are those two different parts? Because we can do stuff like take React DOM out and hook up React native, and then we can use the same, basically the same React code to power a mobile app. And so we can hook up different interfaces to the React library. But for our purposes, we're going to be using React DOM all the time. So what we're doing is we're grabbing React DOM and we're doing this create root. And basically that just says, hey, I'm going to give you an element, HTML element, and that is where we are going to start. That's going to be where we're going to hook our React into. And then we can just say render. And basically render says, take the JSX that's in here, and the one we care about is app. Take the JSX in there, render it out, and basically do an inner HTML in that object. And if we look at it here, we can see that hey, there's our div ID root, and everything else gets smacked into there. So that's just like the plumbing of it. This is going to be the same in pretty much every React application you do. Know that if you wanted to, you could have just like one little window here that was your entire React app and a static HTML page. But in general, we're going to be doing full page apps. So this is just boilerplate, but that's what it actually does. So this root render thing, actually, I want to talk about that for a second. What does that function do? Again, this is not JavaScript, clearly, because JavaScript doesn't look like this. But what React is doing is taking that and turning, when you make a component, and a component is in JSX, it's this thing that looks like an HTML tag, but is actually stuff that you can define. Whenever you see a component like that, that is actually a function. What root render is doing is saying, hey, take that thing that looks like a function, or a thing that looks like an element. This is actually the function name, and anything that's like, stuff equals junk in here, these are actually arguments to the function, basically. So we're looking for a function named app, and we're going to run that function, and whatever it returns, we're going to stick it in that root element there. Oh, look, we're importing app from somewhere. We're importing app from our app.js, and look, it is in fact a function. So anytime you see something in angle brackets in JSX, it's a function. What about these? What about header, div, image? Those are actually functions as well, but those are built-in ones. So under the hood, they look like function div, do div stuff here, function p, do p stuff there, and that return HTML. So at the end of it, your index.js is rendering out a bunch of functions that at the end of that whole rendering process will return a string of HTML that gets smacked into your page, which is pretty cool. So again, this is returning this div function that contains some other stuff that's returning the HTML that gets put in there. So that's neat. Yeah, I think that's all I want to say about the overall stuff there. Yeah, any questions about like how React does stuff overall, and then we'll talk about like making components and stuff.
Hey, quick question here.
Yeah.
So like, just so I'm understanding the file setup that's to the left there.
Yeah.
It's like you said, all right, you have the div, header, image, those are all functions.
Mhm.
As far as the setup, do those functions actually live in like the node modules folder,
Yeah.
or is that where those are kind of hiding?
Yeah,
Okay.
so they live in probably in React DOM, and then you can go in
Okay.
here and this is just JavaScript in here. This has here's all the stuff. If you want to, you can crawl through all that and see exactly how it all works. It's really interesting, and it's all open source. It's all on GitHub, so you can see how everything works. But yeah, all those functions are built in there. Hannah, yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, the line 25 it did a per default app.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering, like, I don't know if it's like by opt-in or not. Can't you just do like a per default fountain app instead of just putting it on line
Yep.
25? I mean, what is your opinion about that?
Yep, you totally can. And this is generally how I do it anyway. Um, I I don't know. Well, I don't know. I think there are probably reasons for it to do it the other way. I prefer doing it this way just so, especially when I'm just doing components, it's usually it's something about this size, maybe with some more code in it, but it's easy for me to see at the top of the file. Oh, this is my default function. Instead of saying like, oh, I have a function and I'm exporting it later on. They do exactly the same thing. So it's really a matter of where you prefer putting it.
Thank you.
Yeah. Other questions? All right. Cool. So this is again, this is just the default stuff. We can edit it at will. We can pull all this stuff out here and just get a blank canvas to work with. Fantastic. And just put, oh, here's our h1 function with stuff in it, and see that there it is. So yeah, and there is some CSS here. I'm gonna pull out this logo. We don't need that. I'm gonna delete that because we don't need it anymore. So you're probably always going to have an app.js as your base and kind of build off of that. So you can pretty much write this like HTML and it'll render out into HTML the way you type it. There's two exceptions. One is if you want to add a class to someone, something, you have to say class name instead of class. And that's because this all turns, oh, and there's class name right there. Because this turns into JavaScript, class is already a word in JavaScript. So we can't use class here. The other one is if you're doing a label for an ID, you have to say for HTML or HTML4, something like that. But I think those are the only two big ones. But in general, you can just write as much HTML here as you like, and you'll be fine. So let's talk about just components in general first. Here's my header. So I've got a thing here, a header. I want to include, I don't know, I'm just going to put some placeholder stuff in here. Like there's going to be form. We'll go here, and here will be some images. So those show up on the page. Great. Up a little bit, up that up a little bit. So say I've made a cool form here, and I've got a little image rendering thing here, but I don't want to have all that stuff in one folder. I want to kind of break it out into smaller pieces so it's easier to think about. The same way we break out functionality in vanilla JavaScript. Even if a function is just 1 or 2 lines, sometimes we want to break it out just so we can kind of think about it in a different way. So, and that's where components come in. One of the best, I think they put this, I think, at the end of the curriculum. This Thinking in React series, this is what really made React click for me. I went through the curriculum at the school I used to work for before, and that was not a lot of help. And React was old and busted back then. But reading this really helped me really click into what React works, how React works. And this kind of breaks down like, oh, if I have this list here with a search form and a table with names and prices and stuff, breaking each of those bits into its own component and combining, or what do you call it? But putting together, smacking them together, combining all these components into composing is the word I was looking for, a fancy word. Composing all of these components into what you want really helps drill down on what the actual functionality of each one is and how they relate to each other and the information that needs to be passed and so on. So if you have a chance, I highly recommend looking up this Thinking in React thing. So we can see how components are nested in with each other the same way that HTML tags are, right? So let's just make a couple of simple components out of these, and we'll kind of go from there. So instead of a form will go here, I want to make a component called form. Instead of there will be some images here, I want to put some images. So these are tags that I made up, but because this is React, these tags are all functions. And because this is React, it will give me errors because those are not defined. So kind of doing 2 things at once here. I want to import them, and I want to export them from somewhere else so I can import them. So just to make this happy, let's set up some imports and then make our components. And this is kind of the same as if I'm making an event handler, I'm going to write the name of the event handler and then fill in the function later. So I'm going to import form, and I'm going to say I'm going to put it in form. So that means I would make a new file. That would be form.js. And I would want to do the same thing that I'm doing there. I would want to export default function. I want to give it the name form. And I'm just going to have it Funkiton. Funkiton. Let's just return something here. And what I want to return is this. I'm just going to return a form that goes here. Kill that. And I'm putting it in parentheses. You don't necessarily have to. It just keeps it nice and neat. You can definitely do this, and that will work. If you do this, it will return and not do anything. And that's really easy to do. So just as kind of a matter of habit, I put stuff in parentheses, but it's not 100% required all the time. You'll see how they go. And then hopefully, there we go. Oh, nope, more errors. Yeah, cool. Megan, yeah.
Hi, question about the return parentheses.
Yeah.
I was in some of the lessons, it was saying how if you have multiple lines, you should do the parentheses. Is that correct? Or
If you have multiple lines, like just like this,
like multiple things you're trying to add, like return?
yeah. So here's the thing, and I might as well throw this in now. You can only return one thing, right, from a function. And so if I wanted, two things here, here's another one, it's going to complain because that's two things.
Mhm.
So what I have to do is wrap it in a fragment like this. And basically it's just, you can use empty brackets and close empty brackets to group those in there. And it'll render them both out there.
Okay. And you could use like a div too.
Yeah,
I've
yeah,
seen that.
totally. Yeah, you could just make that a div and a div like that, same thing. I try not to clutter with divs too often because it's really easy to do that. And often, if you are in this situation where you have to return multiple elements like that, it might be a smell that like things aren't broken down in a good way. But I definitely have done this and things that I'm like, okay, yeah, this is the way to do it. So um, yeah, the parentheses is mostly to make JavaScript a little bit happier and just avoid that, like, oh, if I'm saying return like that, it's just going to return, and then this is all going to get skipped. So just to make sure, I tend to put stuff in it every time, or you can do, I will often put my opening tag there. So then that's for sure going to return that thing. But either way,
Oh.
yeah, you'll definitely see both all over the place.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Azani has a question. Process-wise, when I'm writing a React app, do I usually write the full app first and split it into components, or rather keep the app boilerplate and then write components on the go? I tend to, so it's just like developing an app any other way, like you probably experience with your project to some extent. It'll probably be on a feature by feature basis. So I'll be like, oh, okay, cool. I need to, make a nav bar. So I'll do nav and then have some nav stuff in here. I'll be like, okay, cool. That needs to be a component. I'll write just that component and kind of drill down until that looks the way I want it to do. And then say, okay, cool. Now I need to work on my form. And I'll do the form and drill down there. But pretty much I will, unless I have, and again, it depends on where, if you're working on a personal project, you can sketch like this and it's totally fine. It's totally going to work. You kind of like add stuff and play with stuff and put some stuff all in one component and then drill down into each one, or write a bunch of components and then smack them together like Legos. Often, most of the time, hopefully, if you're working at a job, there'll be some sort of design already done, and hopefully some sort of wireframing and layout. So you have an idea where everything goes, and so you can kind of, again, like build it out. Basically, the two main ways are you're doing breadth first, where you're doing like, okay, I'm gonna fill out this component and then go down to the next level, or depth first, where you're like, I'm going to work on the nav. I'm going to drill all the way down to there and then come back up. And now I'm going to work on the images thing. I'm going to drill all the way down there. So unless, and often at your first few jobs, especially, you'll be told which way to do it. But yeah, the best advice I think is to work on your own projects and kind of get a feel for it, which way feels better for you. And different projects are going to feel different ways. So yeah, I don't think there's a answer to that. I think it's kind of like a see what works best for you. But if I have, yes, I guess the actual answer is I tend to work feature directed. So like I want a login form that does this thing, and I'll work on that until it works. And I'm like, cool. Now that I have a login form, I can have the login information somewhere else. I can use that to display a user profile, and then I'll work on the user profile and build components as I need for each thing as it goes along. Did that kind of get to what you're asking?
For sure. Thank you.
Awesome. Yeah. Cool. Let's so I think, let me comment the images out. I think this should work now. Maybe form is not defined. Where is that? Form is not defined in app. Did I not import it correctly? Let's see. Import form from okay, imported form. Great, that worked. So again, and let me do the same thing with images here. I'll do it the other way around. I'll make an images.js, export default function images. And that'll return what I had over there, which is this. Uncomment that. I'm just going to return that. And so from here, since I'm using images is this function that I'm exporting from here and importing here. So I need to import it. The one advantage of doing it, making the component first, or at least stubbing it out, is you get nice autocomplete stuff. So yeah, there's our images. Blam, that goes there. And now we can edit our images stuff here, and that will do that. So even without any of the reactivity stuff, React is a great way to kind of think about think about breaking down your app into components, even if they're just static like that. I had some questions before about importing and exporting. Basically there's two ways you can do stuff. You can export default, which means that when you just import variable from whatever you call this, and this could be called, dogs, whatever you export, it's going to be put in this variable, and that's going to be exported. It's going to take the default export, and that's still going to do the same thing. You can also export stuff as name. Let me change that back. You can export stuff by name, and you can even do them in the same file. So I can say export default, or not export default, export const. I'm just going to call it username. And it's going to be Mark. Great. So I'm exporting something, whatever that is, doesn't matter. But I'm exporting it by name. So if I want to import that, I have to say import, and then I'm going to put it in curly brackets. I put that in images. Is that right? Yeah. And it's dark for some reason. You can also do it on the same line if you want to. And that's why it's giving me a weird color. So you can put it on the same line. So the thing that is not in curlies is going to be the default export. The thing in name is going to be, or the thing in curlies is going to be the named export. Azani, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's faded because you haven't used it in the app yet.
Yeah, well, let's go ahead and use it. So one of the cool things about JSX is that you can include JavaScript in it, and you include it with curly brackets like that. Anything inside here, the value of it is going to be inserted here. So if I put the number 23, 23 is a value. And hey, there's 23 header. If I put in the string blah blah blah, that's going to be that. If I put in 7 plus 4, it'll be put 11 in there hopefully. So anything that is an expression in here is going to return the value and put it in there. And this is where we get caught up sometimes, things that are expressions versus things that are statements. Ifs, thens, fors, those are all statements, and they don't return a value. So, and we'll do this, we'll get into this more later on. Things in here have to return values. So if you want to do an if, you have to do a ternary. If you want to loop over something, you have to do like a map or something like that, something that returns a value. Yeah, so one of the things that have values are variables. So I can put username in there. We know username is imported from images. It's Mark, and we can, here's Mark header. And that's exactly the same as if we said, consts, we can put whatever. That'll give us, okay. So we can put JavaScript in those curlies. That JavaScript can be as short or as long as you want, as long as it returns a value. That's what's going to be put in there. Yeah, there's that. Questions about that stuff? Yeah, Kimberly.
When I'm putting stuff in the curly brackets, it errors out on me.
Is it returning a value? Is it something that exists in JavaScript?
I was just putting in what you had, the whatever.
Do you have
Never mind. Sorry. I see where it is. Got it.
There you go. Yeah, as long as it's valid JavaScript, it can go in there. Other questions about how those values work? Cool. Wow, we take this summary. So since these are basically functions, and we want to be able to pass things into functions, let's talk about how we do that. React has the concept of properties or props. These are so basically when you have attributes, I'm going to use images again as an example. When you have attributes in your JSX that looks like HTML, those are basically the parameters, the arguments you're passing into your functions. So if I want to say, images length equals 23, this will pass in this key value basically to my function. And length 23, I'll call it, what's it gonna, I'm just gonna say title equals stuff. So it's passing in these key values to my function. And to pass in key values, I need an object. So basically what's happening here is it is taking the left side and right side, turn those into key value pairs, and passing that object into my function. And traditionally, they are called props, like that. You don't have to call it props. It can be called, key values or whatever you want to call it. They're called props in React, so that's what we tend to call them there. And so this is literally just a regular old object that's passing in with these keys and values. And so that means we can grab them. So I can even just make sure I'm getting what I think. I can console log props, and that should in the console log out. Hey, there we are, length 23 and title stuff. Cool. So those are the values I can get from here. So I can say in here, hey, my I forgot what they are already, length and title. I can say const length equals props length. I can say const title equals props title. And again, this doesn't have to be called props. It can be called sandwiches. Doesn't matter as long as you know that the first thing that is passed into your function is an object, and you can get stuff in that object. Props, great. One of the important, both philosophical and practical things to think about with props is that they are one way. You pass stuff in, and you use them in here, but you don't change them, and you don't change it in above from the parent. There are ways to get around this, which we'll talk about. But in general, we don't change the values of things in here. So now I can use that here. And so I'll, instead of that, I can say, hey, here's my length. And title is title. So I'm, again, passing these props in as key value pairs. I am taking that object and grabbing it here in images. And I can also just say props.length and props.title. So I don't have to do this part. Now that should show up there, title stuff. And since this is JSX, I can also use my curly brackets here. So I can say username. And so that will pass that JavaScript in as well. So I'm grabbing some JavaScript here. I'm passing it in as a prop using curly brackets. And then I'm grabbing it out of props here and using it in the JSX. Azani, yeah.
Hey, so as I was doing one of the labs that related to props,
Mhm.
some of the like errors that I got related to in the actual like app component, the data could be called user or username or whatever it was.
Mhm.
But once I was actually passing things down into the child component, so like the images, for example,
Mhm.
it like actually did have to be called props. Like I couldn't say username at that point. It was like a special. I don't know. That's what I was finding. Then the test. I mean, like maybe it was based on how the test was
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
written.
Did it not work or did it
Oh.
not pass tests? Those are two different.
Right. Got it.
Yeah. The tests may be looking for something specific, but to make it work, you can call it anything.
All right. Cool. That's a good clarification there.
Yeah. Did it work or did it pass? Yeah. This is literally just an object that you can grab. And one of the cool things is you can destructure them. I think we talked a little bit about destructuring last time, but short version is that if you're getting an object as an argument there, you can just pull things out of it like that and then use them as variables. So if I'm getting an object as an argument here that has the keys, length, and title, I can grab those directly and use them as variables. And you're definitely going to see that a lot. Yeah, that's destructuring. Yeah. But again, there are many different ways to do it. If you want to grab props and say props dot whatever, or pull them out into variables, or destructure them on your own time, however it works, that's great. I will tend to do this, and you will definitely see this all over the place. So learn what it means. You don't have to use it. You don't have to speak it, but you have to be able to read it. Great. React components, imports, stuff in curly brackets, expressions, passing props down. What else? I think that's a good coverage of the basics. Anything that you would like clarified or talked about in general, or just kind of repeated to get in there? Is this on a new hand or old hand?
Yeah, sorry, new hand. Sorry, I feel like I've been
You're good.
going ham today. But
Over here.
as far as the destructuring piece, can you talk about that
Mhm.
more? Because I feel like for me, that was a moment of like it making a lot more sense of like it was looking more like how the arguments kind of used to look as opposed to like the prop style. But
Yeah. So let's let's just kind of look at some JavaScript here. So if I've got const object equals key value number 23. So I've just got a regular old JavaScript object here. If I want to just destructure them straight up here, I can say const key and num, say. So I'm declaring two constants, p and num, and putting them in curly brackets because they're not saying I'm destructuring them. So I can say those two things equal that object. And so now if I look at key and num, key is going to be value, num is going to be 23.
and at this point, what you have on line 14 is JavaScript.
Yep, that's just, destructuring is a straight up JavaScript.
Got you.
Yeah. So now if I have a function that uses those, so a function, whatever, I'm going to take in, my object or props or parameters or what you call them. I'm just going to call it stuff for now. So if I'm going to pass in, I'm going to call function, whatever, with my object. So I'm passing in this object to my function here. So inside there, I can do a couple things. I can, console log out. I can log out stuff.key, and I can console log out stuff.num, and that'll give me value in 23. I can say, const key equals stuff.key. It goes out that way. So it's a little bit clearer sometimes, especially if you're using key and num or whatever a whole bunch of times. I can destructure stuff down here like I did before. So I can say, I can just bring this exact same thing here. I can say const key and num in curlies like that equals stuff. So I'm grabbing the stuff object, I'm destructuring it here into the keys, into the values there. And this will be value. And then the final evolution of that is just taking this destructuring statement and putting it right up here where I'm expecting the stuff. And so now I'm still getting that object into that function there. But instead of taking that object and using it in the function, I'm immediately destructuring that and just putting it into those variables. Downside here is, if there is another thing, if there's, dog equals spot, if dog equals spot, and I destructure it like this, once I'm in the function, I don't have access to anything else that's in there. So if there are things that you may or may not want to use, you might want to just grab the object in there. But you'll very often see stuff written this way, destructured in arguments.
Got it. Yeah, no, thank you so much for this. The last question is, will this entire thing you have here still work without line number 14 if you took that out?
Without that, yeah.
Okay, cool. That makes sense. I just want to make sure of that.
Destructuring on the line there.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right, cool.
Cool.
Thank you.
Yeah, great questions. Sweet. What other questions do we have? Cool. I think this is where we're going to leave it today. This is a good setup for everything else. I think I'm going to try and squeeze in 2 lectures tomorrow, just so we can get through stuff. And of course, they'll be recorded, so you can watch them at your leisure. So the next 2 bits, kind of like a sneak preview here. Let's see, we have components and props basically. I'd like to add in state tomorrow. So there are ways to keep state in a component. So you can change the view according to that state. And state is like special variables that hook into the life cycle of React. So like if let's do, so if I didn't bring in username here, say, if I have, const username Mark, great. If I did something later on that changed that value, nothing would happen. Basically, I need to put this into state that's hooked into React, so React knows, hey, when this changes, I need to re-render the page. So we'll talk about state a little bit. And what will we talk about? We'll talk about callbacks, basically. So ways that child components can change the state of parents. And then Wednesday, we'll hook in some fetch stuff and kind of put it all together a little bit. And that'll be a whirlwind tour. But I'll also give you all the resources, so you won't be stuck with all that stuff. And we'll do plenty of review next week. Great. Last call before we get back to it. All right. Cool. Thanks for hanging out. We'll be standing down in like half an hour. So I'll see you shortly. Later.